Welcome back to the Fear of Change podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Frummel, LCPC, and today I have the joy of having Danielle Ireland, LCSW from Indianapolis, speaker and podcast extraordinaire for Don't Cut Your Own Bangs, and a therapist just like the rest of us folk therapists that exist out there. So thank you so much for joining us today, Danielle.
Thank you for having me, Jennifer. This is really fun to be talking peer to peer. I don't get invited on many other therapist podcasts, so this is really special.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I'm really excited about it. And the fact that you're in Indiana. I actually am also licensed in Indiana, but mainly practice in Illinois. So I don't have many therapist friends in Indiana. So this is another good fortune that we're finding. So yeah. Well, as I had mentioned to you when we were talking previously, one of the things that I really like to help listeners and such understand is that we therapists are humans too, and we are ourselves going through our own transformative processes. And in that, we find a lot of stuff that we did not know that we needed to find. And thinking about you in your role, both as a therapist and then as a podcast person, and then also as a speaker, I'm curious where along this continuum you found yourself going, I don't know if I can do this, or having that question of, should I change? Should I be different? And where that landed for you.
Sure. Where should I change? Should I be different? I would say that some version of that or some iteration of that has followed me through almost every life cycle of my journey. So before working as a therapist, I started off doing commercial acting and theater work when I was 13. That was like my first paid job. And so my background was in the performing arts, and I just knew in my heart of hearts that that was what I was going to do. It was probably the most convicted I've probably ever been. I was like, this is where I'm going. And then I graduated with my undergrad with an arts degree and a manager and a plan to live in Los Angeles. And then I got gobsmacked with massive culture shock because it was my first, I think, the first real impact of the dream space, the imagining space, the, manifesting space, the wouldn't it be nice and journaling space, meeting reality, meeting gravity, meeting physics, meeting new driving routes, meeting totally different energy.
Yeah.
And that, where those two overlapped, I experienced just massive anxiety. And what I can see now as I didn't know it then. I couldn't name it then. I didn't have the language for it then, but it was just massive culture shock. And everything in my nervous system was like, nope, not this. This is not what I thought. And so I came home with a degree, thankfully, no debt, but I came home with a degree and was living back at home, which is what I swore I would never do. I swore I would never
Of
be.
course.
And one of the things I've definitely learned is like, no sooner do I say I will never, that usually becomes the lesson that's
Yes.
shortly like on its way to me. And it was humbling, I would say. Like, for the most part, I experienced a lot of rejection in those early days in that field and performing, but I also, because I started so young, I I kind of I didn't experience the rejection as personally. It was just like another chance to try. And so this 23-year-old, almost quarter life crisis was a real reckoning for me. And I didn't know, well, what do I do now? And
Yeah.
so I kept auditioning for regional commercials. And then I found myself in a ballroom dance studio in a training class. And that's, it felt like lightning in a bottle because it was sort of performing. It was not a desk job. It was definitely more entertainment hours like I was used to. The
Yeah.
studio opens at 1, it closes at 10:30, and then we rehearse and practice for shows after. So I was used to the late nights. And so I just sort of put my blinders up and just dove into that. So instead of processing my feelings, instead of doing any self-reflecting, and
Feeling
instead of,
them.
yeah, I made no space, and I just got busy, which worked for a while until it didn't. And then I found myself maybe 4 or 5 years into that uh, process starting to, I wouldn't say it was as strong as self-sabotage, but I had less enthusiasm. I was dragging my feet. I was hitting snooze more. I wasn't as called to show up on time or early. I was coming in a couple minutes late. And so I did what Brene Brown talks about, where I inserted the worst fears about myself within gaps of understanding. And I was really wrestling with shame. It's just all of the fear and of the unknown, the uncertainty, the failure, that all kind of came crashing back. And so I was able to run from it and razzle dazzle it away for so long until I couldn't. And then those old feelings came back. And little by little, what I can see now that I couldn't know then was I started, it actually started through reading self-help books. It was, revisiting Oprah DVDs. I think Oprah had like a 20th
Oh
anniversary
my
edition
God,
of her
that's
show. And
great.
and so I started reading Martha Beck, and Brene Brown came out with one of her first TED Talks that really talked about the power of vulnerability. And then it was, shame. And that, those little breadcrumbs led in a trail of little by little shifting that self criticism into curiosity and
Yes.
applying it with a little bit more compassion. And over that, and I'm skipping over some steps, but like that's in essence the process of it was sort of stumbling and trying and failing forward. And I started to carve out a path that led me to go back to school to become a therapist.
I love that. I love that. Because, yeah, I mean, you in being the performer that you were, you knew enough, right? You knew enough to go, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I can do this. And then to put yourself out there in LA. I mean, LA's culture is its own beast. I mean, and we're not just talking about, the driving and the
Yeah.
traffic, and
Yeah.
coming from Chicago, I mean, the LA traffic is for real.
Yeah,
Um,
and I had
yeah,
visited every year in college. We went out twice a year. We did workshops. We trained. We visited people. Like my program did their absolute best to get you as prepared as you could be. I thought
yeah.
I knew, but going as a visitor and then going up with a one-way ticket is a entirely different feeling. And uh, yeah, it was. I don't feel shame anymore, but I can see now it just wasn't for me. And
Yeah.
at the time, that was a really hard thing to admit and to.
Admit to yourself, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Right, to come to. Yeah, and so interesting, right? That you went to these self-help books and those things kind of you started listening to that inside voice. And I think that's, one of the pieces. And then that somatic piece of the dance. I mean, you really were trying to move that sensation away, but leaning into it. And I think that is one of the real things that we find with, just working with people is recognizing when you're listening to that inner voice and when you're feeling the feelings, like where does that put you? And look at that, like you pirouetted into being a therapist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
And that journey too, that was I don't know if I belong here, to kind of go back to your original question. I don't know if I belong here. I don't know if I can do this. That all came screeching back when I decided to go into the graduate program, because what I learned when I was even researching programs and what degree did I want to go for and what could I do with it and how much time would it take, what I realized in that research process, that I didn't have all of the science credits I needed with my art degree to even apply.
Oh,
So I had to take 12 credit hours. I had to basically do a full semester of school to even qualify.
apply.
Yeah.
Oh my
And
goodness.
that was my real I'll say that. Sorry, my dog is asleep. She's dreaming. Emma, Emma.
It's okay.
I just I just can you
I
hear
can,
her?
it's okay. I can
Okay.
tell, I can tell them to kind of like try to scrub it
Okay,
with
perfect.
this
So I can
marker.
wake her up too.
Yeah.
But that I that was one of what I now see as like how true confidence is built. It was I went in and I really checked in. Is this something you really, really want? Yes, it is. Okay, it's going to be hard. Do you still want it? Yes, I do. Okay, it's going to take this to do it. Do you still want it? Yes, I do. And so it was just this constant like hitting fear, hitting uncertainty, hitting doubt, but the internal conversation was yep, yep.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
but it was so unnerving and in many ways like terrifying every step of the way, but the inner voice of yep, let's do this, that never changed. But I definitely felt like a baby deer, like moving on like shaky
Yeah.
legs, like
Bambi legs. Right.
being the
Right.
oldest kid in the class. Oldest kid, listen, I was in my, in my early 30s, but I was like the oldest student in the class in
Yeah.
virtually every class I was in.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
again, like you're saying, it's recognizing inside, like I'm checking in. Nope, it's still accurate. Nope, this is still what I want. And I think that there is something to that, that a lot of people, they don't give themselves enough time. I was just having a session the other day with someone who said, "Yeah, when I really think about it, I divorced too soon." And I was like, what does that mean? And what he meant was is that when he really reflects back, he should have given it a little bit more time. And so that's part of the work now, is like, how do you sit with that discomfort? And it sounds like you kept sitting with it over and over and over again, and just kept leaning forward as opposed to pulling back and running away.
Well, I will say there were a lot of mini versions of me pulling back and running away. It just didn't last very long. It's like I learned that for for me, procrastination is actually a little. I've accepted it as a part of my creative process. So even with the podcast, for example, so I had the thought, huh, I think I think I want to do a podcast. Okay, what would it take to do that? Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin. I'm just, there's too much to think about. And so for 2 weeks, I would pretend like I didn't have that thought. But then the thought would pop back up when I was in
Okay.
the shower, when I was in the car. It would, you know, I think I still want to do a podcast. And then I would maybe do one brief Google search of like how to start a podcast. And it looked too daunting, too big, too like, ugh, that's too much. And then I would pretend for like another week that, well, I didn't really have that thought, or I don't know if I have the time, or I would, tell
Yeah.
myself stories. And then I bumped into somebody who happened to be someone who produces podcasts. And I was like, well, dang it.
Wow.
So, could I take you out to lunch and just ask you some questions? Like, I wasn't even ready to admit out loud that I wanted it, but I was just curious about it.
Yeah.
And her name is Jen Eade. She has the Brassy broadcast and she still helps people produce podcasts. So a lovely shout out to Jen. I call her my fairy pod mother because
Aw.
telling her, like, I think that's one of my next steps is so it's like not the hero's journey, but in someone, it's like you get the call, you answer the call, and then I avoid the call. I don't want to go. I don't want to do it.
Right.
And then once I say it out loud to somebody else, then it starts to grow legs and it starts to
Yes.
move. But all of those steps that happen before, even today, I probably have still many cycles, many smaller iterations of that exact same process of,
Yes.
gosh, like I really think I want to do this. That's going to take so much effort. I don't think I want to do this. And then it
Yeah.
just
Right.
rinse, repeat.
Right. And again, I think that you listened. You listened to yourself. You took in this information and you sat with it. And again, I think a lot of people, and I know even people, especially people in recovery, maybe even some like AUDHD errors that I know, like they really kind of talk themselves out of it. Or if you're in addiction mode, you just, you know, mute yourself. And and then, you know, maybe eventually one day you wake up and you're like, "Whoa, why did I mute myself for so long? What what was it about that that I didn't listen to or didn't think I could do or could listen to?" And I think that in that way, it's like when you really own like knowing yourself and loving yourself enough to sit with that and then allow it to grow legs or even crawl. You know, we move so much in that way. So with don't cut your own bangs, and you know, where have you found yourself kind of pulling back and then leaning in and pulling back and leaning in?
Yeah, so I mean, to jump forward a little bit from launching the podcast to today, the pulling back and leaning in, I was really dragging my feet with putting the podcast on video because when I started it, that really
Mm,
wasn't much of a thing yet in the
yeah,
culture or in the podcast space. But
yeah.
as it was happening, which is I find it interesting when I really sit back and think about it because I have so much on-camera experience, but I think
Yeah.
because I think I knew how like I knew what it would take to make it look the way I wanted to, but I also knew there was such a gap in my own knowledge and understanding of how to execute that I I made the possibility seem overwhelming, and so I just didn't want to touch it. As opposed to like maybe
Yes.
you're not gonna be like a Chris Nolan of podcasting, you know, and maybe that's okay.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
maybe there's a lot of real estate between somebody doing it
Yes.
on their iPhone and the very top of the field, and somewhere in that space there's room for you. Like I
Yes.
I had to let myself give myself permission to like it might look amateur. It may not look the and but that took me really taking that recover like that perfectionist in recovery, which is
Yes.
perfectionism is just a way to try to protect ourselves from shame and feeling like we're
Yes.
not enough. But I had to really take that feeling on a walk. Like I would literally take myself on a walk and I would pretend I was talking in my headphones, but I would just be talking to myself, and I would kind of coach myself down from avoiding it. And so when I launched it on video, it was like it my body felt the way it felt starting grad school, the way it felt when I finished getting my makeup credit hours and starting over. I mean, it still felt that way, and I've been consistent with it now for over a year, I think maybe like 14, 15 months, and I will say now I feel more confident in my ability to meet a challenge. Like I the confidence is earned through kind of the sweat equity a little bit, and
Yeah.
I because I can have continued to do it and have become more interested in the learning process than the execution. I feel so much more grounded in what I'm doing, and I also have a clearer sense of the progress I made as well as what I can do next. Like I am
Yeah.
actually looking forward to the next step as opposed to feeling dreading them and
Overwhelmed by it.
feeling
Yeah.
shut down by them. But
Yeah.
that was really, really, truly earned a little tiny inch at a time.
Yeah.
Um, and because in my imagination, right, there's no time, there's no physics. I don't need to eat or sleep. My kids don't need me. It's like I dream up an idea and then I just want to live in that idea. But then when that idea meets the confines of the present moment,
Every day. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. It
Yeah.
just it
Yeah.
takes longer, but it reminds me of it. I can't remember who to give credit of this quote to, but that we tend to overestimate what we can accomplish in a week and underestimate what we can accomplish in a year. And so I'm just trying to let myself play with the concept of time.
Yeah. Well, and you know, and again, just hearing you, it's like what really has happened, and I think, if people really were to sit down and kind of maybe look at their history, they would probably be able to see some of these patterns, but not in a way that's like, oh, I'm such a loser, I suck, right? But more of like, wow, so this is my process. I have to get uncomfortable in order to get comfortable into who I really am. I mean, and Danielle, you have really exuded that for yourself. You know what I mean? It's a beautiful thing, and it's wonderful to know that like that is a part of who you are and how you operate, and it's not shutting yourself down. It's actually helping yourself grow into that person that, yeah, you keep dreaming about, and giving yourself more of that opportunity. It just means you keep expanding, and maybe metamorphosizing from like a monarch butterfly to some cool iridescent green butterfly. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
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 And I think the awesome part that you just threw in too is that like your kids actually get to see some of this happen before their very eyes.
Yes, I becoming a parent, like I think a big part of what was adding pressure from like a different angle when I was going, into my master's program and then began working in private practice, there was this there was this dangling sort of like ticking clock of, my biological clock.
Yeah.
And so we didn't start trying until I was 35, because I wanted to get through, I needed to get through my program. I wanted to get through the first 2 years of getting my clinical hours. And I know that there are different therapeutic degrees and different tests, and that can vary state to state. But for me, I had to graduate with my MSW, take a test, like a 3 or 4 hour test to get the LSW, and then get roughly, it can't happen before 2 years, but it can
Yes.
happen as early as 2 years. So many clinical hours and supervision hours you have to get. And then you take another test, and that's where the C and the LCSW comes in, which allows me to either offer supervision or work for myself. And
Right.
so I really wanted, like, that was the mark. And once I got that, then I was like, then I will be willing to even think about trying. But I was really contending with, I just found, I just really started to get a sense of what I wanted to do and how in the world would that work
Yeah.
with a baby. And it
Wow.
was hard, but I will say that my first pregnancy, I carried so much of that fear, and then I lost that pregnancy at 12 weeks. And
Oh,
so there was truly something invaluable in that loss. Um, and I've done so much healing work around it. I actually did
yeah.
it. I've talked about it a lot on the podcast, and I'm comfortable talking about it. But I think what it helped me know, like in my bones, in that loss, and particularly in the grief of that loss, was I have no doubt now. I went from having so much doubt and uncertainty about, like, am I wanting this because I'm supposed to want it? Am I wanting this because I really want it? Like, there was so much noise, and that grief silenced the noise. And I knew, I'm like, oh, I will be a mother, and somehow.
Yeah.
And then it made me that much more.
I just got goosebumps.
Thank you. I feel like I honor that moment, and I honor that life
Yeah.
every time I talk about, this, talking about it. It's kind of how I'm honoring it.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, so that gave me so much clarity. And not that I want to put the grief on a pedestal by any means, but it went from being the hard that my mind was manufacturing and just recycling, and that anxious feedback loop, to
Yes.
I'm sitting in grief, which is a different energy. It's like a different tone than the suffering that I was feeling in my mind before. And that loss just right sized everything. It changed how I worked. It changed how many client hours I saw. It changed how I treated my body. I was much friendlier with my body. I treated it like a companion, not a meat suit that carried my brain around. Like, it really
Yeah.
changed so much in a good way. But yeah, it just that that was again another unique pressure kind of coming into all this. But I love, thank you for saying that, my kids get to witness this being built and happening, because it's not something that I is top of mind all the time, but it is so appreciated to have it reflected back to me. So thank you.
Yeah, yeah, you're welcome. Well, and again, I think that that's the thing is, as we evolve as humans, we don't have to carry those same generational things, right? And so just because you decided to put your career in a front facing place doesn't necessarily mean that it's hurting or will hurt your family life and your children. And I think that, your kids getting to see a woman have her dreams and have a family life and whatever else you want to put in there,
Yeah.
it's such a gift for them that they didn't even realize is happening. I think about all the different ways in which, we can hold ourselves back, and as moms, I think that especially when we work, there is this tendency to have so much judgment on ourselves that we're not doing enough. And then to add to that, that like, and I want to take care of my own personal desire to be creative, it's going to add more time and energy. But the question is like, what gains come out of it? And, I hear from my own kids, like I have them help me design my office locations. We go and we will go hunting for furniture and things like that together. And so now to see them in leadership roles and to see that they're using some of that, I'm like, oh, so actually it wasn't harmful. It was actually a really great thing. Um, but at the time I didn't know. I didn't know if it was a right thing or not. And now here you're seeing it. And so yeah.
Jennifer, how old are your kids, if you don't mind my asking?
Yeah, my twins will be turning 18 this week.
Oh my gosh, are they seniors in high school or going, to be
They
freshmen?
are leaving in the fall. They are leaving in a month for college and they are separating for the first time ever. They're identical girls. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, that
So
is huge.
it's huge. And, I'm recognizing, I don't want to fill the gaps of motherhood with more stuff, which I can easily do.
That's a mic drop moment right there.
Yeah,
That's a mic drop moment right there.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
But my son is also, he just turned 21. Um, yeah, so I'm literally at a place of going like, oh my goodness, like, yes, I birthed four babies when you look at my practice. But really these three kids are, young adults now. And wow, like, didn't I, I just kept going through, doing the things. And now I'm like, oh my goodness, it's happened. And it's real. And, I was talking with my son last night about the podcast. I was mentioning that I, was going to be interviewing you. And we were just kind of making dinner and talking about it. And he was like, I love that you like to go after things that make you happy. And they can also help people. And then they can also help you to like be happy because you're doing the things. And I was kind of like, wow, like he sees it,
Yeah. I,
yeah,
I I think that is really like that is I think I work with a lot of people who experience caregiver fatigue, burnout, or are in codependent recovery. We could put a lot of different names or labels on
sure.
it, but
Yeah.
that when you are pouring into yourself,
Yeah,
it's sort of like a rebrand of selfishness. But when you're pouring into yourself, there's just more of you. It makes me think. Years ago, I saw a TED talk, and I wish I could remember his name, but this gentleman was basically he was talking about how we really need to we need to change how we think about nonprofit, because not treating it like a business means that we're not getting the best business minds in nonprofits to
right.
help scale it to do the good work.
Yes.
And that he was like, instead of arguing over how the slices of pie need to be allocated, what if we make the pie bigger? if we just and I feel that way about what you're saying. It's like when I pour into me, it's not that if I think about it, my like there are things that are finite, time, energy, capacity. I do understand that. And when there is more of me, there's also more of me to give. And
100%.
it's like and then like the exact opposite of that is that like when we do something out of obligation,
Yeah.
not because it's truly in our heart, but when we do something out of obligation, somebody always pays. There's always
Yes.
an energetic cost and a toll doing things because, we feel we have no other option. And I do understand, like, with respect to a lot of areas of life, there can be moments like that that we can't always negotiate around. But I think the more, to your point and to what your husband said so well, that like where we can add that and fill that in, it's like the ripple effects just go and go and go.
Yes. 100%. Yeah, one of the things that I've been doing lately on our episodes of the podcast is talking about the invisible woman and how so many women, especially at midlife, start to kind of like when wherever they're working tend to just kind of like turn into the wall. And so many of them don't want to show up because of fear, right? Because they're midlife and people are recognizing they're not the youngest person on the block, and they don't have the highest education maybe, or the newest education on AI. And on top of that, I've also been kind of exploring the coming home to yourself, coming home to who you truly are and the value of that. And so I've been kind of splicing between those two spaces in my solo episodes, really helping people to explore the fact that like the more we pour into ourselves and be our genuine authentic person, the more there is to go around. So I mean, that's exactly what I think we need to start looking at, and not self-limiting beliefs and not the things that our brain told us when we were young and we didn't know any better. Like, no, I just can't do that because, like, no, we can do a lot and we can impact so much. But if we tell ourselves we can't, then, what's going to happen is you're going to not do it. Um,
Two resources came to mind as you were sharing what you've been talking about in your solo cast that really helped me start to create some language around what you just articulated so well. And one is Gary Zukav's The Seed of the Soul. And the latest edition has a foreword both from Maya Angelou and Oprah, so just a little, the
yeah.
some fans of that book. And then the other is The Way of Integrity by Martha Beck. She references an exercise that we could probably, I think it would probably fall. Sometimes I get CBT and DBT a little confused. I know one is about accepting the feeling and embracing the feeling, and the other is more about questioning the feeling. I think this is more CBT, but there's four questions you ask yourself when a story comes up, and the first two are yes or no. So is that true? And then whatever answer comes, and then the follow-up question, and I like to add higher stakes to this. Can you absolutely know that it's true? But the playful stakes that I like to add to it is like, would you take a puppy's life on the truth of that statement? Is it worth a puppy?
Yeah. Is it?
because
Oh,
because if you can think of anything truer than the statement you're convinced is true, then the puppy lives.
yes.
And but then that also means like, okay, so maybe it's 99.9% true, but there's
Right.
you're creating like this like little crack of possibility that there could be something truer than the thing you said. So I'm not good at technology, it's too hard for me to learn. Well, is it really too hard for me to learn? Well, yeah, it's too hard for me to learn. Would you risk a puppy's life over it really being too hard for you to learn? Well, okay, maybe it's not too hard, but it's definitely hard. Okay, we've just created some possibility. We just created some space. All right, let's play around with that. Or the other one I
I
like to
love
say,
that.
if the puppy example is making people cringe, and I understand animal lovers out there may not like that one,
No.
but would you bet $1 million? on the
Mm,
truth of that statement. Would you, $1 million in your hand, if there's anything truer, you don't get the $1 million. Like,
yeah,
okay, well, let me see. Could there be anything truer than that thing? Okay, yes, there might be something truer. So you just kind of play
I
around with
love
it,
that.
not to talk yourself out of it, but to create
Yeah.
space. And then you follow up with the third is, okay, so is it true? Can I absolutely know that it's true? And then the third is, how do I show up? How do I behave? What happens when I believe that thought is true? And then
Ah,
and then who would I be in that same reality without that thought? And that's, again, that's one exercise from the book The Way of Integrity that I
I
love. But it
love
just,
that.
I go back to it
All
quite
the
frequently.
time. I
Mm-hmm.
kind of do something similar, but I call it reality testing. But I
Mm.
like the way that you're framing it though, because it's different than just kind of reality testing.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really, like, there's so many tools out there,
Yeah.
and like in the
Yeah.
toolbox of life, there's this just, and they're all kind of related in some way. But sometimes I just know for me, it's like I'll hear an idea, and then I'll hear one person say a similar idea in a slightly different way, and then it just lands
Yeah.
different.
Sinks in. Right, right. Well, this was such a great opportunity to join forces and kind of meet and talk about, yeah, all of your ways of your journey and how you've been able to stay true to yourself. I love it. I love it. And I love hearing about your podcast and would love to, again, collaborate a little bit more with you when it comes to things in Indiana because
Yeah.
we're not far at all. And like I said, I don't have many therapist friends in Indiana. So I love being able to now know you exist and that I can reach out to you and help connect in that way.
Well, likewise, and thank you, Jennifer, so much, and for everyone listening to the Fear of Change podcast. It was a real honor to share space with you. And actually, I have a gift from the Don't
Oh,
Cut Your Own Bangs space to the Fear of Change podcast. So anybody who has been listening to this point, you've been listening all the way to the end, you get rewarded. There's a free
cool.
gift that won't be listed in the show notes. You just have to remember it. But it's my website, danielleireland.com/free. And when you do that, it'll pop up and you'll get a free download. It's a free meditation download. But
Oh,
yeah,
I love that.
yeah. But I'll say that one more.
Oh,
danielleireland.com/free. And then that's a gift from me to you.
I love that. Thank you so very much for that. And thank you all for listening and joining us today. And see us on the next side.